Hello and welcome to How Smart Solutions Can Help Educators Increase Interest and Engagement in STEM. We want to make this session as interactive as possible, so here are a few things I'd like to remind you about before we begin. First of all, if you have experienced any technical difficulties during today's presentation, you may use the menu located in the upper right-hand corner of the presentation console to find answers to common issues. If you need further technical assistance, you can enter your question into the questions and answers box on the left-hand side of the presentation console. For your reference, this presentation console has been optimized for viewing at a screen resolution of 1024 by 768 or higher. If your screen resolution is set to a lower level than that, you may be unable to see the entire presentation. If you need to make adjustments, you should be able to do this through the display options in your computer's control panel. To view the slide presentation in full screen mode, please click on the full screen button located above the slides. For your reference, all lines have been placed into a listen-only mode during the presentation to prevent any background noise. So you will hear us, but we won't hear you. We do, however, encourage your questions at any time during today's event. Again, to submit your questions to today's speakers, simply type them into the questions and answers box on the left-hand side of your screen and then click the submit button. We will attempt to answer as many questions as possible during our question and answer session a little bit later in today's event. Please note, if you do choose to view the presentation in full screen mode, that you will have to disable the question and answer functionality. In order to ask a question to the presenters, you will need to exit full screen mode by clicking on the full screen button located in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. I would now like to turn things over to today's moderator, Luis Morales, Education Consultant, Smart Technologies. Luis, please go ahead.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Luis Morales. I'm the Education Consultant for Smart Technologies in Texas and Latin America. Thank you again for joining us on how Smart Solutions can help educators increase interest and engagement in STEM. We're going to have three presenters, Robert Goodman, Jamie Yost, and Sue Popelka. Starting off, I'm going to introduce Robert Goodman. Robert Goodman, the 2006 New Jersey Teacher of the Year, is the director of the New Jersey Center for Teaching and Learning and a teacher of science and engineering at the Bergen County Technical High School in Teterboro. As a science chair and a teacher of physics, chemistry, environmental science, and engineering at the Bergen County Technical High School, from 1999 he founded and led the development of the Progressive Science Initiative, or PSI. Bob is a member of NEA's Commission of Effective Teachers and Teaching, a content expert reviewer for Achieve, and has served as a field reader to the U.S. Department of Education. Bob?
Thank you, Luis. I'm going to be talking to you today about a couple of programs that we developed over the course of the last few years, Progressive Science Initiative and Progressive Mathematics Initiative. As Luis mentioned, I'm a teacher at Bergen County Technical High School in Teterboro, New Jersey, but I'm also the director of the New Jersey Center for Teaching and Learning, which was created by the Teachers Union in New Jersey, the NJEA, with the goal of empowering teachers to lead school change. Everything I'm going to be showing you has been developed by teachers, for teachers, and if you begin to use them, everything I'm going to show you is for free. It's all available at our website, which I'll be describing to you. And as you use them, the only thing we ask is any improvements and suggestions that you have about how this can be better, you should please email us, because we're all about creating a professional learning community of teachers around the world. I'm going to be talking to you about three different stages of development that we've gone through. The first one was the Progressive Science Initiative was developed to teach high school science to students. It's now also being used to create new high school science teachers, and then we applied the same principles to K-12 mathematics, and that's being piloted right now. The Progressive Science Initiative used AP exams as a goal, and we did that because it provides a standard metric. We could see how we were doing and year to year and between schools. And it's also recognized by K-12 and colleges and university students and parents, so that as we achieve success with this metric, everyone could see what we were doing. It's also correlated to international competitiveness, and one of our goals is to make the U.S. competitive internationally in science and mathematics. The results that we've achieved as of 2010 are shown in this bar graph. The blue represents the number of students in 2010 who took each of the AP exams indicated. It's Physics B, Physics C, Electricity, Magnetism, Physics C, Mechanics, and so forth. The blue bar shows what was done at the school. The green bar shows what would have been expected if you applied the New Jersey percentage of students to the population at the school. So the green would have been what would have been expected in a traditional school. The blue is what was achieved in terms of AP Science exams taken. Similarly, if you look at AP Science exams passed using 3 as the passing score, 3, 4, or 5, this is what was achieved at the school. So these are the results of the program after about 10 years of implementation at Bergen Tech in Teterboro. Some people think it must be the special population, but this graph illustrates it's one of many that was done in my doctoral dissertation, which documented this program and its results to discount the idea that it was some other explanation other than the program itself. This shows that the students have relatively average SAT scores relative to the state. The methods that were developed in PSI and are now used in PMI as well involve attacking all the elements, really attacking the entire ecology of what happens in a classroom and in a school. And by looking at all the elements at the same time, we think we've created a revolutionary change. I'm going to show you this for two reasons. One is that one element is that the sequence of science has been altered. This applies more just to the high school science sequence, but the thinking applies to everything we do. We always want everything we do to flow seamlessly from one to the next. So if you go across from left to right, it's 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, and we teach physics to all 9th graders in the school, and then it flows to chemistry and biology. I don't have time in this limited amount of time we have today to explain all of the details, but it's important for you to note that by having this curriculum flow in a logical way where each course prepares for the next course, you end up with a story that makes sense for students, even without the APs. In this slide, you can see the APs play a very important part. If you take the APs out, the structure still makes coherent sense. On the other hand, what's done in the United States normally makes very little sense. Biology doesn't prepare students for chemistry, nor does biology and chemistry prepare students for physics. Also, you can see that in this scenario, the science course taught in 9th grade doesn't help reinforce algebra skills, while in our program, algebra-based physics is taught at the same time as algebra is taught. The pedagogy that we use, the combination of social constructivism and direct instruction. We use round tables and group problem solving in heterogeneous settings, so the students sit around tables solving problems together. But we also use direct instruction because 2,000 years of Western science won't be discovered by students in the course of a school year. So you need to intersperse the two. We use smart technology to develop notebooks that does this interspersing, and that's very reliant on the use of smart response, which I'll show you in a second. Our grading is all based on students get grades based on what they know and can do. We give retakes on all assignments. Nothing subjective about the grades, and everything we do in terms of our summative assessment is correlated to end-of-course tests, whatever is appropriate, usually APs, but now that we've moved into math, end-of-course algebra tests, common core assessments, and so forth that are now being developed. The smart response is used to do anonymous student polling, so the formative assessment that's embedded in our smart notebooks, we're constantly, every 5 or 10 minutes while we're teaching, there are embedded questions, 2, 3, 4 questions in a row that test whether the students understood what was just taught to them. An example would be, if this would be the direct instruction in a mathematics course, we would explain how you add decimals. We would then show an example of what a problem would look like and walk through it slowly with the students, make sure they understand it. Then we would immediately give them a smart response question. By stopping the question, we end up with a pie chart showing all the answers, and we use those answers to diagnose, A, whether the students understood it, and B, if they didn't understand what we just taught them, what types of misunderstandings exist. If everyone gets it wrong, we reteach. If it's a division, some people getting it right, some people getting it wrong, we don't tell them, you can't see from this slide who's right and who's wrong, so we use this to spur social constructivist interaction among the students who are sitting around these round tables, let them argue and defend their positions to one another. If we told them who was right when we did this slide, then the people who got it right might feel like they were out of the discussion. Now they have to defend their perspective. To implement everything we're doing, you need this technology. We're putting round table and chairs in here as technology because in the past we suggested but didn't really strongly suggest that as an important feature. But it turns out, and teachers would say that they would be able to bring the chairs together to get the same effect, but in fact they don't. So you really would encourage everyone to get the smart board, smart responders, and to have the students sitting around round tables. Everything that we post, we have over 700 documents to teach these courses posted for the free use of anybody online. The only thing the students can't see if they want to teach themselves or if their parents want to follow it and teach themselves is the assessments. Obviously, we don't want the students to see that. Here's the website. If you click on courses, if you click on science courses, this would be your choice of courses. And then within within algebra-based physics, these are all the units. And if you click on a unit, you would see presentations in Smart Notebook, also in PDF, homework assignments in Word and PDF and Smart Notebook, labs, assessments that would go down way below to the floor in your room right now if you're looking at this on a screen, because we have tests, retests, and retests on everything we do. And again, it's all posted for your free use. We're getting a lot of people visiting us these days. We're getting over 5,000 visitors a month from around the world, mostly in the Northeast United States, but it's going beyond that now. And we have a lot of different ways of interacting with us. One thing we found was school districts were struggling because they didn't have physics teachers, and physics is an essential element in our program, both for math and science. And so what we've started is we started the program to train physics teachers using exactly the same materials. Basically, our idea is if you have a talented teacher, we can teach them physics. We teach all our ninth graders physics. We know we can teach teachers physics. So if you teach a talented teacher physics, you can have a talented physics teacher. And we've been doing that. We've partnered with Kean University with an endorsement program that has been creating new physics teachers in northern New Jersey. The first cohort started about 18 months ago. 39 teachers began. 31 of them were new to teaching physics. From that, 19 have already completed the process, passed the praxis exam, and are highly qualified physics teachers with an endorsement to teach in New Jersey. On this bar graph, you'll see other states. New Jersey is shown as the average over the last 5 years, about 8 physics teachers a year. The other states were based on conversations with people from those states who tell me that these numbers are basically between 0 and 2 physics teachers a year. So in our first year out, we've produced a lot of new physics teachers compared to what all the universities are doing. We have 60 more teachers that are going to be completing their work in May and June. And about another dozen or so just started, and we have expected another 20 or 30 to start this summer. So we're teaching a lot of students physics who wouldn't have taken physics. Many of the teachers that we're creating are teaching in Newark, Patterson, Jersey City, or large urban districts in New Jersey. Of those, a third of those students have requested to take AP Physics, which is a remarkably high number. The average for New Jersey, including the affluent suburban districts, is less than 2%. This graph is missing its headline, but it shows the number of physics teachers in Newark over the last 3 years. And you can see we've gone from 14 physics teachers in Newark to 39 using this program. Oh, there's the headline. Okay. Similarly, at Technology High, one school in Newark, we've gone from less than 10 people a year taking AP Physics. This year they have 79 students taking AP Physics. The first year they've had the second year they've had the program in force. And similarly, the SAT scores for this school are actually below the state average. So there have 79 out of 450 students in the school taking AP Physics. The normal would be 2%. So we've had nice articles written about us, and I'm going to rush through because I don't want to keep everyone else short of time. But we've applied these same principles to a mathematics initiative that began about 4 years ago. We're now piloting pre-algebra. You can read these courses, pre-algebra, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and so forth. College algebra is being piloted on the Kean University campus, all using the same exact approaches with Smart Notebooks, Smart Response, and so forth. Common Core K-5 mathematics is being finished now and will be launched this summer, so it's in time for next fall. And K-12 mathematics will be completed by September with the last 2 courses that we're doing this summer, AP Calculus and Geometry. This is the website for the math. Well, it's the same website, but when you click on courses, if you go to mathematics, you would see a list of courses. This is the units in pre-algebra. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob. Very interesting information. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to have a poll here. So we're gonna. If Eric, if you can just show me that poll. Here we have the questions, and feel free to just click on the answer that you think is best. So the poll is: what are the top technology challenges today in engaging students? Please select all that apply. Ensuring that technology stays current, having technology that is integrated and compatible, possessing a technology fluency to building compelling lessons, delivering lessons without the technology getting in the way, getting the right technology training, getting funding to purchase technology for the classroom, or none of the above. And I'll give you just a few seconds here, and then I'll broadcast the results. Okay, right now everybody should be able to see the results. And if we look closely, we have two outliers here. So the first one would be getting funding to purchase technology for the classroom. It's 1. And the one right next to that one would be getting the right technology training. Right? So funding and getting the right training would be the answers that seem to be the majority here. Okay. Next up, we're going to have Jamie Yost. Jamie Yost is the 2010 Washington State Teacher of the Year. He is a high school chemistry teacher at Bellingham High School. He has worked on seamlessly integrating technology into his science classroom for the past 10 years, and he has developed techniques that take him away from the front of the room as a presenter to beside his students as a supporter. Jamie?
Hi, Luis. Thank you very much. I appreciate that introduction. I'm just going to take a second to pull up my desktop. And as Louise pointed out, I am the 2010 Washington State Teacher of the Year. I also teach honors chemistry and advanced placement chemistry at Bellingham High School in Bellingham, Washington. In addition, I teach a hands-on kinesthetic-based class called Bicycle Maintenance and Indoor Cycling for Fitness. And my interest has been primarily in trying to figure out how to engage my students and allow them to be more active learners. So today what I'm going to address is a couple of different things. I'm going to be looking at my teaching philosophy and sharing with you some of the ideas that I've developed over the last 15 years of teaching. I'm going to explain some of the changes that I've made to my program in the last 6 years that have dramatically changed how I address and work with my students and integrate technology in the classroom. And then I'm going to show you a quick sample lesson of how I've integrated some of the SMART products within my daily lessons in order to engage my students. First, a little bit about my teaching philosophy. And this has been a process that's developed over the last 6 or 7 years. I've really felt strongly about making sure to engage my students in relevant science, making sure that the information that I'm presenting has meaning to them and is directly related to what they're interested in their life, and in hopes expanding some of their understandings of sciences so that they become literate citizens. I think it's really important that they're challenged at their level and help them move to a higher level of understanding by allowing them to be active participants in their learning process. I am strongly against passive learning techniques where students sit and are expected to absorb material. I'd much rather have them be active within that process. And while lecture, I think, plays a very important part of what I do in the overall learning process, most of my time in the classroom is spent helping guiding students with hands-on processes and developing their own mastery. Along the same lines, I strongly believe that students should be given multiple attempts to prove their mastery of understanding. So I expect that my students fail and that they move forward and develop their understanding towards a level of mastery to build their foundation and continue with their understanding of science. Some of the changes that have occurred to my program over the last 6 years are the following. First off, I think it's fundamental that students are responsible for their own learning. Again, the conversations that I have in my classrooms as a result of changing my teaching style have been more towards what students can do to own their understanding and own their learning, as opposed to me as their teacher trying to fill them with information. One of the big changes that I've made in the last 6 years has been in the general layout or the general design of my class. Instead of doing lecture during class time, I produce vodcasts and have the vodcast be their assignment in developing their understanding. That allows me to have class time dedicated towards problem-solving sessions, sessions that involve hands-on learning or experimentation. This also has expanded the level of questions that the students have a tendency to ask. Instead of responding that they don't know, they are much more likely to ask specific questions and more directed questions to help them further their understanding. And then lastly, in order to understand where my students are at any particular moment, I have heavy reliance on formative assessment and use SMART products, the SMART response system, routinely in order to assess where individual students are and where the class is on a whole. Along the same lines, I think it's absolutely essential that students have resources available to them when they need them. So by vodcasting my lectures and having them available online, students can go at any time when they need the information in order to develop their understanding. So I'm just going to show the link to what the students have access to. I have a wiki page that I update regularly that allows students to access information when they need it. So the AP Chemistry exam, for example, is coming up here in a couple of weeks, and they can review information way back from the beginning of the year using the vodcasts rather than having me or relying on me available to reteach. And that's something that I think is essential in their development of their understanding of their responsibility as active learners. So what I'd like to do is show you a quick sample lesson of how I utilize some of the SMART products in order to engage my learners. And one of the things that I think is absolutely essential for me to explain is that while I do lecture, as I mentioned, through the vodcasting, I don't do a lot of presentations up at the front of the room during class time. Instead, my students use the SMART products as their own resource. So it's not uncommon for you to walk into my room and see a group of 5 or 6 students working on the SMART board, another group of 5 or 6 students engaged in some sort of hands-on experiment, another small group engaged in a problem-solving activity, and me more or less moving between those different groups and helping to guide their own understanding. So the sample lesson that I brought up today would be something that would be on the SMART board. They would move through the SMART board station and eventually into a lab type scenario as they develop their understanding of some basic principles of gas laws. The SMART products allow me to use it essentially, use the SMART board as another resource or another teacher more or less in the classroom. So as you'll see as we move through this sample lesson, in addition to having written instructions and activities that they're performing with the SMART board where the students are manipulating the SMART board and having discussions around questions that are being raised on the SMART board, they're also getting some instruction using some information that I've recorded with the SMART recorder. So with all my activities, I always lay out very clearly for them what my expectations are because, again, I have the expectation that all my students are actively engaged and are active learners and taking responsibility for what's happening within their learning process. Then I always give them a little bit of instructions about any specific tools that they might need for the SMART board. In this particular case, students are asked to click on an icon, a lovely picture of myself. No, that's not my real hair. And that icon would provide a little bit of background information on whatever slide or instructions on whatever slide they're exploring. So for example, in this particular lesson, it's important that they take a few minutes to review a concept from a previous idea or previous learning. So I take a little bit of time, and the SMART board allows me to draw back on that information to help them to re-engage their previous learning. Then I ask them to perform an activity using the SMART board, and I'm going to click on the icon here so that you can hear the instructions and see how I use the SMART recorder to provide them information about what they're going to do in this activity. So I provide a little bit of instruction through a video clip, and then the students are asked to perform an activity on their own, and then call me over when they feel like they have a representation of these different phases. And then ask them to discuss as a small team and come up with a sense of a new concept based on previous knowledge. And then, again, moving into more hands-on based activities. What is wonderful for me as a teacher utilizing these smart products is that rather than having me address the entire class and try and lead the class through a discussion in this process, I leave it up to the students to explore on their own, and I feel strongly that as a result they have a tendency to own their learning and truly engage in what they're learning. We then have a tendency to bring it all together with an activity that would be common. For example, maybe a laboratory experience where they're collecting data, and that data then is analyzed as a small group and then entirely as a class to kind of sum up their ideas, their overall ideas. Lastly, at the end, I always ask them to describe what they know. And as independent learners, I provide them with quick links back to resources. So these are questions that they would address again in their small groups. And by, again, utilizing the smart notebook technology, they can jump right back to a particular part of the presentation or the experience that will help them to develop their understanding further if they didn't catch it on the first round. So I think overall it's absolutely important that we not only consider technology as a presentation tool, but I also feel like there's an essential step in moving the technology more into our students' hands. I feel like we're addressing a different type of learner these days that is very savvy in the use of technology, and as a result, we have to capitalize on their experiences and help them to develop ways in which they can explore and gain their own understanding through the use of their technology. So thank you very much for your time, and look forward to questions.
Thank you, Jamie. Love the hair. Just a reminder for everybody, all the participants, if you have a question, feel free to ask your question. You'll see that the question and answer tab on the left. Just go ahead and post your question. I do see a couple of questions raised by the participants, so go ahead and ask us questions. Next up, we have Susan Popelka. All right, Susan Popelka is a National Board Certified Teacher, the author of Simple Science with Simple Stuff, and the recipient of the 2002 Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science and Teaching. She has presented at state and regional math conferences, technology conferences, STEM summits, and is a facilitator for smart courses and workshops. Susan.
Hi, this is Susan Popelka, and I think I need my sharing option to come up on my screen.
And one moment, Susan. We'll get that up for you.
Okay, while we're waiting to get that up, I'll do a little quick introduction here in addition to what Luis was so kind to offer up. I teach 4 80-minute blocks a day at River Falls High School in River Falls, Wisconsin. These are pre-calculus classes, mostly juniors and seniors. And one of the things that I found that has been most engaging, if I could pick out one single thing that has brought my students excitement in the classroom and engagement, it's been the clickers. What have been referred to in the previous 2 presentations already, the Sentio response clickers is what I call them for short. When I bring those up in the classroom, when the students see the package out there, they're very excited about it. And they're just wanting to get in there and start solving problems, which, you know, I have to admit that before I had clickers, I didn't have that excitement. Students were like, okay, another math class, more review problems for the day, and get to the new problems. So how are we doing there on the sharing?
One more moment, Susan. Thank you.
Okay. So this is me doing my stand-up. I don't have any good jokes, but I guess I'll kind of cover what's going to be covered in the first couple of slides while we're waiting to get the sharing working here. The clickers that SMART makes, there's a SMART response PE, what's called the PE, and now they make the new XE. Just give me a minute here. I'm trying to share my screen. Can be used we're almost there, folks. Okay, now we're good. So I'm just going to forward a couple slides here. These are the two responders that I've used already in my classroom. Bob touched on this a little bit about how they're using it for formative assessment. I'm really going to be expanding upon that. And also Jamie mentioned using them in his classroom. So you can tell there's a common theme here. The clicker on the right is the one that I've been using for 3 years and was using it on almost a daily basis. A couple of months ago, I received these Response XE clickers on the left. The big difference is that one on the right, the PE, you can answer questions in the multiple choice mode using all these responses. True, false, you see the buttons up top here, and yes, no. Whereas with the Response XE, you can do the same thing. You can answer questions in the same way, but they have the added capability of math expressions, and you can kind of see that in the screen here. You can enter math expressions as answers, and you can also enter text. All right, I was trying to tell you about how I use clickers in the classroom. I use them to assess students' prior knowledge, as formative assessment, which again Bob touched on, as a review after instruction, to assess perception, and as ongoing preparation for the ACT and SAT test. And you see the one thing that's missing from this list you might be wondering about is summative assessment, being able to give students quizzes using the responders. And of course you can do that. That's just not what I've got the expertise in at this point. So I'm not using them for the summative assessment, although they have wonderful capabilities in that area. You're going to see a couple of slides here, examples of each of the 4 of those 5 categories. First one is assessing students' prior knowledge. So we're just starting a unit, and this unit is on the family of functions, the different functions that students should be familiar with. And as a teacher, you think, well, they had that in Algebra 1 or Algebra 2. They obviously should be able to understand it and have a good handle on it. So I'll ask a couple of questions before I actually start the instruction. And the students will answer the question with the clickers, I should say, and then I reveal the answer in this way. And also pie chart. So the pie chart will show how they've done in the question. And you see if this was the pie chart to go along with this question and the correct answer is answer A, only 9% answered it correctly, that tells me that there's going to have to be some serious reviewing in this matter. This is another slide that shows a question in the same concept area, families of functions. Our next category is formative assessment. So this is during instruction. Here's an example from a real lesson that I just taught a few days ago, actually, on the laws of logarithms. And you can see I've got some clip art going on here. All my presentations in my classroom will have clip art and animations. I had a colleague one time ask me why I spend all my time doing that when really it doesn't add anything to the curriculum or to the instruction of math. And my response to that was actually what the police officer is going to reveal here. Is that once you have their attention, you can teach them anything. And I found that really to be the case. With little animations popping up here and there, students never knowing what craziness is going to appear on the screen, I've got their attention. So here's our lesson on logarithms. I start off with a slide which is your basic classical demonstration, whether it's on a smartboard or a whiteboard or a chalkboard, the laws, the product property here for logarithms. And then we would work a couple examples. students would be coming up to the board and showing their work in this area. And following a couple examples on that property, they'd get an assessment question like this, and they have the opportunity then to answer it using their clickers. And I would display the answer and again the pie chart to see how students were doing on it. If the percentage isn't very high for getting this correct, then it means I will have to do a couple more questions and probably right away. I also have a method that I use when I display the pie chart. I can, with the Smart Response software, display the order that students answered the questions correctly along with their names, because they ID themselves when they log in to start a session. And what I'll typically do is pick the third person in the list that has the correct answer. I don't display the students that have the wrong answers, obviously. But the third person in the list with the correct answer will come up to the board and explain their work on this problem. While that student's doing that, I can walk around the room and help students out individually. We're in the same lesson, and now we're dealing with quotient property of logs. So the same pattern, they get the quotient property, we work a few examples like this, and then they get a question using that property. So you can kind of see how it flows, and then there'd be the other properties that we'd be going through in the same way. At the end of each lesson that involves clickers, I'll also have a question which assesses how they're doing. So this is a perception question. This one they're asked on a scale of 1 to 5 how they're doing with logarithms. So they answer this, and I do not display the results for this to the class. Later I'll look at them to determine which students individually will need help or which students need some challenging problems at the other end of the spectrum, number 5, where Einstein would be very proud of them. The questions that I've shown you so far can be answered with the PEs. The Smart Response XE, I told you I also use, allows students to enter math expressions as answers. So here's an example of a question where they can enter in the actual equation of the graph. With the XE, I can ask them not just a simple perception of how are you doing on a scale of 1 to 5, which does give me a lot of information, but it doesn't really nail it down to what exactly they're having trouble with. So I'll ask a question like this on the XE, and they can tell me exactly what's challenging for them in a particular subject area. I also use them as a review, and you'll see a couple slides here that have an example of that. This one was following a unit on vectors. So this would be a question before the test to really make sure that they have got the ideas down. This next slide shows a review question in a unit on trigonometric functions. I also post my notes online, so students will have slides of this in the notes if they miss class or if they want to go back and review. Another thing that I've been using that has just been amazing as far as student engagement and excitement, everybody gets involved when we do this type of activity. What the students do is they write their own questions and then they present them with the dot camera for the class to answer. What I've also done with this is used questions from, since I'm teaching 3 blocks of the same classes, I can share questions from one class with another class. It kind of actually triples the amount of questions that I have available that way. So here are a couple of examples of actual student questions. Before they write these, they do them in groups of 2 or 3. We talk about what makes a good question, and they've seen a couple of my examples in the past, and hopefully those are good examples that I've been using all along. We talk about making them so that they can be answered in a reasonable amount of time. You don't want clicker questions that take 2 to 3 minutes to answer. In fact, one of the criteria here when I'm grading it is that they can be answered in less than 2 minutes. We also talk about making detractors. So students pick choices that another student might make if they made a mistake in the problem. And this helps them really to think critically about the topic that they're learning. Here's another example, and I picked to show this one because it was kind of cute that the student put their own clip art in to the slide. I use the clicker questions for assessing perceptions, and I think I say this is potentially the best use of clickers because in the past I used to ask students questions with the thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs flat if whether or not they understood the particular topic we were on or whether or not they're ready for the test or such. And I couldn't really get a good handle on exactly who was having trouble or how much of problems they were having. So here's a question before instruction. This helps me decide how much I need to review. And here's basically the same question. Those questions were exactly the same, but asked after instruction. So you see the answer down here is I still don't get it, versus on the previous slide I don't remember much of it from my previous class. And a question about whether or not they're ready for the Chapter 4 test. Again, on these questions, on the perception questions, I never share the answers with the class. Sometimes they want me to, but I don't want to embarrass students. In this presentation today, I have been showing the slides that I've made. You can also find slides online at exchange.smarttech.com, and you can search by a kind of responder you use, by the subject area, and by the grade. One thing that I've found useful in here, I've used some of their complete question sets, but I've also used their question sets as a template to make my own questions. I do surveys a lot with students, and recently I did a survey in which I asked them questions concerning questions like, am I asking too many questions? Am I using the clickers enough? Should I be using them more, to get a good handle on what they're thinking? And then I always have a comment section. So these next couple of slides show actual quotes from students who responded to those surveys. This question is really, I think, really revealing. When I show the pie chart, the students just get very excited that their answer is part of that big piece of the pie that everybody got. In fact, they are constantly they're working together to try to get the whole pie. This one's interesting as well because it shows that, and I've had many students comment to me about this during class, that they thought they were the only person that was doing a particular problem wrong. And then they find out that, no, there are other students that are struggling with it in the same way. I keep reminding them that they're students. The fact that it forces them to work out the problem instead of waiting for a classmate to answer, I also find encouraging. In fact, that's one of the biggest engagement issues with the clickers. These are my perspectives, and I've pretty much touched on all of them. The one that I haven't spent a whole lot about is the wrong answers tell me what mistakes students are making now. So I make sure when I write these questions that I do anticipate what types of errors that they're going to make and see if they're making those errors or not and how I change instruction to accommodate for that. So I'd like to thank you for participating in the SMART webinar today. I sure have enjoyed it, and I'm going to send it back to Luis.
Thank you, Sue. Outstanding stuff. We have a couple of questions here, so now it's going to be question and answer here. One of the first questions I'm going to go to here would be the ANSIC 1979. Let's see, it says, I see all the amazing lessons in the SMART notebook. I would like to be able to make it myself, to customize my lessons. How do I do that? Do you have any courses that teaches teachers how to make their own lessons on the SMART notebook? Yes, so if you go to smarttech.com/US/resources/training, or if you just go to smarttech.com, you'll see at the very top resources. Click on resources, training and PD. There you're going to have a lot of resources for you. There's a lot of free training material that you can get there. Also, if you just go to YouTube and search for SMART Notebook, you'll see many videos that are out there designed to train teachers. And Sue made a good point earlier about the SMART Exchange. You can always go to the Exchange, download free lessons, and you can modify to meet your needs. So that's how you can start getting ideas and using other teachers' ideas and then making your own eventually. Let's see here. There was a question here that I think would be for one of the presenters. If anybody wants to take a lead on that, go ahead. Let me just read it. It says, how long would each group spend at the SMART board? Would it take a couple of days for all students to access the interactive presentation? I think, Jamie, they were working more in groups as if you have, in the SMART board in a lab. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. Most of the lessons that I ask them to do up at the smartboard, or the experiences at the smartboard, should take groups somewhere between 12 and 15 minutes. I think it's really important that they're moving around to different experiences within their time in my class, and the smartboard is one of the key tools that they're going to use in developing their understanding. So somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes.
Thank you, Jamie. Does anybody else want to add anything to that? Okay.
I'm going to add just one more piece to that. So I had mentioned the vodcasting that I do that really is their homework, their traditional homework, is to watch short instructional videos that I produce for the students. And I produce them using the smart software, the smart notebook software. So they see me use it in the vodcasting, the presentations that I make. So when they come to class, they're already familiar largely with how to work the software. The previous question that was asked was, how do we learn how to make it as teachers? How do we learn to make these presentations on Notebook as teachers? And I just have to say that it's incredibly intuitive building notebooks and lessons. There's a lot of good resources out there, and the students pick up on it very, very quickly.
Thank you. Okay, going on here to another question here. It says, are you utilizing various smartboards in one session? Most of the ones here are going to be a single smartboard. What you do have is you have a complement, which would be the smart slate. I don't know if any of the presenters use a slate as well, along with the responders. But for the most part, each classroom will have one smartboard and the complement of a smart slate, making the teacher mobile, or if you have students that aren't able to get up or are shy at the board, the smart slate really comes in handy, so they work very, 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 very good together. We have questions about podcasting here. Jamie, Bob, Sue, do you have any comments on podcasting or any experience with that?
I also do podcasting. This is Sue, and I also do podcasting for my classes. And what I don't use it as the flipping instruction as Jamie is talking about, although I think that's a great idea. I want to try that. The way I've been using it in the past is for students who miss class, or students who have to leave class early for appointments or their music lessons. And then also the podcasts that I put out online, a little bit different than what Jamie was talking about. They are not problems that are in the book, and they are not problems I worked in class. They're new ones. They're totally different. So students who have been reading their book, coming to class, and they're still having trouble, have that one extra resource. And I have in fact, I've been told by the technology coordinator or district that I have the highest number of hits on my site because so many students are going out there and watching those. And again, from my surveys, I find out that most students are using that as a resource.
We don't, this is Bob, we don't use a textbook in our courses, so I'm not doing podcasting, but all of the instruction, for instance, a typical unit might be 100 to 150 slides for one unit. So all of the instruction that a student would be getting in class is actually available for everyone online for free anyway. So students, if they miss a class, there's not a podcast for them, but there is all of the instruction, and the homework always is posted with answers since we don't grade homework. So students really are in a position to drive their own instruction to the extent they want to do that.
I think Bob makes a really good point, and I'm just going to clarify really quickly the difference between podcasting and vodcasting. The presentations that I put together are not just audio, but with the smart software, I'm able to produce screen capture videos. So it's very similar to a student actually being in a class receiving instruction. And I think Bob's point of students getting the information when they need it, I think, is absolutely essential. And that's been one of the key elements for me and one of the key successes for my students in my classroom is they access that information when they're ready for it. So if a student is out because of an athletic event or they're out sick, they can more or less stay up with what's happening in the class. In addition, for me as a teacher, I'm not faced with having to reteach information. So I rarely get the question of a student who's been out coming into my room and saying, so what did we learn? Instead, they ask questions along the lines of, I noticed in this particular vodcast we were solving for pH. Can you describe to me really quickly how we would solve for POH? Very specific questions as opposed to a general, what do we learn? So I've used it and relied on it heavily over the last 6 years and continue to expand my use of it, and have found it to be a really great complement to some of the other technologies that I use in the classroom, the smart product suites.
I'll just add one more thing as well. I guess what they're being called now instead of podcasting is VOD, video on demand. Although I've used that word and people have given me funny looks, so I'm not sure it's accepted right now. But anyway, I also have had my students make vodcasts, and these are made using, as Jamie was talking about, using the smart recorder, which is very easy to use. I've been able to teach them how to use that in a matter of minutes, and then the students have made their own, as class projects, have made their own podcasts, which are on my website and available to anybody basically worldwide that goes to my website.
And I do think that's a really good point, Susan, in terms of having students think beyond the walls of their classroom, doing presentations that are really available worldwide, kind of adds relevance to the students' work. When they recognize that people from anywhere could be looking in on their presentation, not just looking at a poster board that's put up inside your own classroom, but rather something that's presented to the world, it adds relevance to it.
And this is actually a common theme of, I think, the move towards technology and in education. It really allows sharing and collaboration between students and between teachers. So if I create a great lesson, why should I be the only one who has access to it? The time it takes to create a great unit may be 100 hours. It makes more sense if lots of people can contribute to that and all of them can improve it. So the idea that you can access everything that Jamie's doing and that Susan's doing, and that the New Jersey Center for Teaching and Learning, we have 5,000 people contributing to these lessons now. And by everyone improving them constantly, you basically get the Japanese lesson study effect, but you have it on a much more global level. So we have teachers in Argentina translating our lessons into Spanish. They're not lessons, they're units, and posting them on our site. So the idea is why should we all reinvent the wheel? And the person who wanted to start their own smart notebook, it is very easy to do. Much more intuitive, for instance, than PowerPoint. But you can also just download one of these existent ones, take what you want from it, and then type your own slides or delete or cut and paste and create something. Rather than starting from scratch, you can start from a pretty high point and just go higher from there.
Thank you so much, guys. A lot of knowledge there. Just one more example on my count. When I did some consulting in Puerto Rico, there's an electrical engineering professor who actually does vodcasting or podcasting. He uses a smart recorder, and so those of you that are asking about the smart recorder, if you go to the Smartboard tools, it will be located in your system menu. So the bottom right corner, you see the blue square with the white circle. Those are your Smartboard tools. If you click on that, the smart recorder will pop up, and that records your sound and everything's on your desktop. So just make sure that you have an open mic, and everything on your screen with your voice will be recorded. So the professor is able to post his daily lessons or from the years past, and the students have access to it 24/7, along with his regular notebook notes or PowerPoint. Couple of questions here that I just want to answer real fast. In Smart Response, how do you only show the correct answers? Well, when you open up Smart Response and you look up to the answers, it'll put them in order by correct on the top and then incorrect on the bottom, and it's just taking a screen capture. Now, the screen capture, tying it into another question, where do you find the screen capture? It's going to be in your notebook toolbar. At the very top or at the bottom, wherever you have it, it looks just like a digital camera. You click on that digital camera, and you're going to get a floating toolbar. The first one on the very left, the first one from the left, you click on that one, and then you can just drag and capture whatever region you want, and you're saving that as well. So knock on some questions there. So to answer that one, what software are you using for the screen capture and the podcast? That would be it. Just go into Notebook. And here we go. It's, can you provide more examples of smart products being used with math and science? With that one, again, I'm going to recommend that we go into the Smart Exchange, so exchange.smarttech.com. and just search for any math and science lesson, and you can use it via your Smart Slate or your Smartboard. And I think that's about all the time we have for question and answers. Sorry we didn't get to all. There's a lot of good questions here, but we are just about out of time. Melanie, can you transfer me over to the last slide, please? Okay. To close off the session here, what we're going to talk about is what we're going to have going on in the future here. On May 5th, 2011, we'll host a virtual event showcasing Smart Steers technology products for education, giving you the opportunity to interact with Smart representatives live. Discover how investing in smart education solutions today can benefit teaching and learning for years to come. Chat live with Smart staff and access helpful information and resources, including fact sheets, videos, reference guides, white papers, and webinars. If you attend on May 5th, you could also win a Smartboard 800 series interactive whiteboard. Register today to attend Smart's virtual event. The link is provided for you below. Okay, so please look at the links there below, and go ahead and click any of those, and the links are provided there for you. Just a little difference here. The regular Smartboard is the 600. The new one that came out is the 800. So in this case, it says you can win an 800. The 800 is actually multi-touch and allows you for gestures on the screen. Anybody else, any comments? Presenters, great job today. Host, thank you so much. Melanie, outstanding job. Thank you, everyone, for joining on. Any questions before we end the webinar? Presenters, anything you want to say before we close off?
It was a pleasure to participate today. Thank you very much, Smart Technologies, for including us.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a great opportunity. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. I learned a lot.
Well, this wraps it up, ladies and gentlemen. Again, thank you so much for joining the Smart webinar today. Have a great weekend, and good luck in the time to come.
Thank you once again to our speakers and audience for joining us. This does conclude today's presentation. You may disconnect your lines. We hope everyone has a great day, and take